Have you ever wondered why one baby seems to settle at 6 weeks and another one just doesn't? Well, this week on Sense by Meg Faure, we are back with our resident paediatrician, Dr Nellie Balfour, and we're tracking her journey all the way through from pregnancy to her second little one's first birthday. Her little one, Uyakile, is 6 weeks old now, and in this episode, we have lots of details that every mum of a newborn is quietly wondering about. We talk about that 6-week smile, and that's a milestone that we all wait for, and why it sometimes can show up a little earlier and sometimes a little later. We get into feeding, breastfeeding, formula top-ups, and the surprising thing that happens when your milk supply changes with each pregnancy. We talk about something that nobody prepares you for, the grief of your last breastfeed, whenever that moment comes, and I tell quite a personal story about my journey there. But what I loved most about this episode is watching two completely different sensory personalities emerge between her two little boys right in front of us. She has one slow to warm up baby and one who is already showing signs of a social butterfly. In this episode, I explain exactly what's happening underneath these sensory personalities and what it means for how each of them will experience the world. So if you've got a 6-week-old, or if you're just curious about what those early signs really look like, this episode is for you. So let's get into it, and please do share it with a mum of a newborn. Welcome to Sense by Meg Faure, where we make sense of the art and science of parenting. Parenting is grey and gritty and beautiful all at once. And my life's work as a healthcare professional is helping parents to feel more confident in a season that can feel quite overwhelming. Each episode, we share honest conversations with real mums. We dive into the science with experts, and we simply make sense of it all in very practical ways. This is your space. You are not alone. You are held. So let's unpack the journey of a lifetime with sense. So we are absolutely delighted to be joined again by Dr. Nellie Balfour. Nellie, welcome again to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Meg. I love being here.
Yeah, it's absolutely awesome. I love tracking the mummies that I track over a long period of time, and all the mums, other mums and dads absolutely love it as well, because it kind of is a snapshot journey into everything from pregnancy all the way through to at least a year of age. And so Nellie is our latest mum who we are tracking. I think you're the 5th mum that we're doing from pregnancy all the way through. Our first was Cassidy back in 2020. That was a lockdown baby, very different. Although I think your first was almost a lockdown baby, wasn't it?
No. My first was 2024.
Okay. All right. So you have not had a lockdown baby. I can't imagine anything worse than being locked down with babies and toddlers. Oh my goodness. Those mums. Very rough.
Craziness. I know.
Yeah. So Nellie, we have now got a little 6-week-old, haven't we? How are things going?
So things are going good. It feels way more natural this time. And like, I know what to do. I'm more confident. I'm more equipped. I'm not as anxious. I feel like I'm just settling into the role much better of being a mother this time compared to last time.
Isn't it amazing? And I do think that's one of the wins of second-time mums. I mean, I certainly found it my first time around, that shift to, being a mum of a baby was just, it was brutal. I questioned every cry. What was I doing right or wrong? Did I have enough milk? Second time round, I think you've got more perspective and more wisdom, but also because you can't sweat only one child all the time, you can't sweat the stuff that you sweated first time round. Are you finding that?
I also thought it would be a little bit more difficult to kind of have to juggle 2 kids, one being a toddler. But I am finding that, I'm not sweating the small stuff because there are other things I need to focus on, and I need to pay attention to both kids and divide my attention between the both of them too. Also, I know that after having raised one child already, that tiny little things are not going to make a massive difference, and my baby will not demise because of a small little thing that I thought they would in the first place, just from experience of having the first one. So I am finding it much better, and I just feel more confident, and I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, absolutely. I had exactly the same experience. Nellie, your journey with this little one has not been easy, though, just because he was born with a lot of early little hiccups along the way, that it wasn't straightforward. And we covered that off in last week's episode. I wanted to ask you, between when we last spoke to you and now, how are things going? Because often, kind of what arises at about 2 weeks is some fussing and crying. And by 6 weeks, which is how old he is, we've kind of got the maximum amount of crying little ones are going to do in a day. So how fussy is he? How much is he crying? And how are you finding that?
So compared to my firstborn, he's not as fussy. I think I just had a super fussy baby the first time around. And I think that kind of made me think that the rest of my babies would be the same way. But my secondborn isn't as fussy, and he sleeps for longer too, which is amazing. So my firstborn would sleep for like 20-minute increments, like little cat naps here and there. And the witching hour at nighttime, he would scream galore in the early evening or at night when we'd have to put him down. But now with this one, he's like an angel baby. He sleeps for 2-hour stretches, which is great. He's fussy only when he's hungry. So we usually know why he's fussy if he gets fussy. He settles quite quickly too. Maybe it's also just because I know what I'm doing more this time around. I don't know. Or he could just be an angel baby. But yeah, I just think in terms of fussiness, I know fussiness generally peaks at around this time at 6 weeks. But we don't have any of that witching hours stuff. We don't have the fussiness. We don't have the crying for no reason. We aren't anxious and running around like headless chickens. I feel like we know what we're doing. And yeah, that's why I said I feel like this time around, it's a little bit easier.
That's amazing. How early was he born? Just remind me.
He was born at 37 weeks on the day.
Okay. So are you counting his kind of adjusted age as, are you saying he was full term and therefore he's 6 weeks old, or are you adjusting a little bit and considering him to be kind of a 4 or 5 week old baby? What are you thinking?
So we are treating him as a 6-week-old baby because we're taking him as being an early term baby at 37 weeks. Because we're just going according to medical literature and what we call term and not term, etc. So yeah, we are saying he's 6 weeks old.
That's interesting. So in the Parent Sense app, up to 38 weeks, we consider them term. And then if a little one is born at 37 weeks, we do adjust. But it's such a small difference in adjustment. And it actually kind of pans out very, very quickly. Like you say, they're kind of early terms. So you don't have to adjust. So the 6-week-old milestone that everybody fixates on, and certainly I am obsessed with it, is the smiling milestone. Have we seen any hints of little attempts at smiles yet?
Yes. And it's so heartwarming. It's like one of my favorite things. Like I know that the social smile usually develops at 8 weeks, but we are already seeing a smile. We actually saw it at 5 weeks with him. And it's just the best thing. It warms your heart, and it just makes all the hard times worth it, all the sleepless nights worth it, all the aching boobs and leaking boobs worth it. It's really awesome.
Yeah, it's so interesting because, it's such a fascinating milestone, and it is a milestone that you can almost hang your hat on. Almost all babies will smile at about 6 weeks. But most people say if they're smiling before 6 weeks, it's not a smile, it's just a wind and it's just gas or whatever. But actually, I know that my children, all 3 of them, smiled earlier than 6 weeks. I just loved it. So I would see these little smiles. And I guess the first few times you weren't sure if it actually was, but it certainly, it's a very special milestone and we do look out for it.
It is. And I definitely think it's a smile too, Meg, because I know that he generally smiles when I try and make him laugh or when I'm playing with him. So it's not wins. It's a smile in my book.
Absolutely. And before we move on to sleep and feeding, tell us a little bit more about the other milestones that you're seeing at the moment. Is he starting to uncurl and lift his head when he's lying on his tummy?
Yes, he is. And he's quite strong. And he's been doing that from a little bit early on also. We are doing a bit of tummy time. Obviously, like most babies, he gets a little bit fussy when we put him flat down. Like we usually use the couch to do that. But when we put him on our chests and we recline, then he does it quite well and he lifts his head quite nicely. He's making beautiful eye contact. And he is fixing and following. So when I move my head side to side or when I kiss him from cheek to cheek, he tends to look at my face too. And then we mentioned the smile also, which is great. So yeah, I think he's keeping up with the milestones for his age.
He's a social little one. Do I remember correctly that you said your firstborn was a slow to warm up?
Yes. My firstborn's a slow to warm up. And then I think this one's going to be a social butterfly, like I had told you. And he's already kind of showing signs of that, which is amazing because our helper, actually, the lady who helps us here at home, she was there when my firstborn was born. And she just actually made a comment this past weekend about how different they are. And she mentioned, with my firstborn, Kolwa, she said, oh, he was so serious. And, he always wanted you and clung onto you and stuff. But this one just smiles at everyone. So I was like, oh, that's awesome. So it looks like it's turning out how I said it probably would turn out and how I suspected.
And what's so interesting? Often people say you can't tell a sensory personality until they're at least 3 or 4 months old. And actually, if people go and do my sensory personality test, which is inside the Parent Sense app, there's a whole course and you can do the little questionnaire. It actually says, don't judge your baby's sensory personality until they're 3 or 4 months old. But there are a couple of things that you've said, both in this episode and in the one when you were pregnant, that really, I think, are worth pointing out to moms. So, first of all, with your older one who is a slow to warm up baby, their sensory profile that underlies being slow to warm up is actually sensitivity. And so they are sensitive to the world. And then that's their default position. And then they warm up and they engage once they know everything's safe. Now, that fits with a baby who is, first of all, more reticent with engagement, like your helper said, but also a more fussy baby who cries more during the day and has more of a typical witching hour, early hours of the evening profile as well. Because what happens with them is they get more and more stimulated as the day goes on because they've got this low threshold. And then by the early part of the evening, they're actually overstimulated. And that's when the fussing comes. So what he showed is very typical for ending up with a slow to warm up personality. And of course, with this little one, what he showed was in utero, he was very active in utero. I remember you saying that he was kicking and kind of moving a lot more active. We often see that. And then often with these social butterflies, their sensory personality, their first emergence of sensory personality is actually a settled baby, which is what he's showing us. So not crying, sleeping well, being settled. And then when they hit 4 months, and I'll be so interested to chat to you, but what happens when they hit 4 months is they suddenly wake up to the world and they go, hold on, this world is more interesting than I gave it credit for. And they start to seek information and they often become fussy on the boob because they don't want to be latched against you. They want to be watching the world and they kind of take the nipple with them when they go and have a look over your shoulder. So they're just much more social little ones. So everything looks like you're going to end up with a slow to warm up and a social butterfly, which is fascinating.
That is fascinating. And that's so interesting because I actually didn't put that together for my firstborn because I wasn't aware of that stuff. And then I remember that I had told you that everyone pretty much on my side of the family is a social butterfly. And then my husband's side of the family, everyone's very slow to warm, including my husband. So it's so interesting that one child took basically like his sensory personality and temperament and one took mine. So I'm super excited to see later on how my second-born develops and what that means for all of us.
So what's going to be interesting is that he's going to go one of 2 ways, your second. Just remind me of his name again.
His name is Uyakile.
Uyakile. I need to write that down so I remember. So he's going to go one of 2 ways. He's either going to remain settled, which means that he actually will never really seek sensory information. He will just always be a settled human, which is just a beautiful gift and it'll be a great combination with his brother because that combination does very well, a very good goodness of it. Or he might wake up and go, oh, I need to be more social and move from being settled to being more social butterfly. So it's going to be so interesting to see how it goes.
It will be. I'm looking forward to it. Like, I want to see how they are. I know that everyone who has more than one kid says, they can be so different, especially like people who have 3 kids says that all 3 kids are like completely different personalities. So I can't wait to see that too.
Yeah, my 3 are completely different. My firstborn was a social butterfly, which I loved, but oh my gosh, it was exhausting. It was brutal. My secondborn was settled and has remained settled. And then my third was just like me, slow to warm up. So she likes to take her time. She likes to control things. She likes to have predictability in her world. It's very similar to me as well. So all very precious, but very different. Today's Dose of Sense is brought to you by Parent Sense, the expert-based parenting app that gives you daily support from pregnancy to sleep feeding and daily routines. Take the guesswork out of parenting by downloading the Parent Sense app today and use the code SENSE50 for 50% off. Nellie, I'm dying to ask you how the feeding is going, because that's a question that a lot of mums of 6-week-olds, that there can be a little bit of a navigation at 6 weeks. Has he had a growth spurt? Are you managing to breastfeed? How's it going?
So I'm breastfeeding, and just like the first time, breastfeeding came quite naturally and easily for me. So I'm quite blessed in that regard. But I wasn't able to keep up with exclusively breastfeeding because it's as if this guy's trying to catch up very quickly and he eats quite a bit. So I've had to supplement with formula. So he's mixed feeding currently. And what I do is, because my firstborn got so used to the bottle and ended up rejecting the breast, I'm trying to make sure that with this one, I breastfeed as much as I can, and I start by breastfeeding, and then I top up with formula afterwards. So I am breastfeeding and formula feeding. He seems to breastfeed better than he bottle feeds, which is also awesome, because he does both well, but the breastfeeding is much better and it's going well. So yeah, I'm actually happy about that. And it's interesting because the other day I read something which said that with each subsequent pregnancy, a woman's milk ducts grow in size and quantity. So it seems like this pregnancy, I am producing more milk for my baby than I did with my first pregnancy. So that's also a blessing, because I really enjoy breastfeeding and I want to continue for as long as possible. So the journey so far is going well.
That's amazing. That's really, really interesting. Yeah, I mean, for me, breastfeeding with all three wasn't completely straightforward. I breastfed all three of them to 6 months old, but it was a real mission for me. I just wasn't a milk cow. I didn't produce huge quantities of milk, and my babies were never fat, chunky babies. And I always felt like a little bit of a failure when I saw other people's babies who were nice and fat on breast milk exclusively, and mine just were these skinny little things on breast milk. But we got there, and then for me, the priority was, kind of getting them through all the way to solids on breast milk alone, and then moving them across. So yeah, it's an interesting journey and quite an emotional journey. Do you find your breastfeeding moments are really emotional, and are you loving that aspect or hating that aspect?
Yeah. So I find that they're emotional, and I feel very bonded to my baby when breastfeeding, which is amazing. And the first time when I could no longer breastfeed it, I was incredibly upset and emotional about it. It felt like a death. I was like grieving this breastfeeding time, because it's a very special time between me and my babies.
Nellie, it's so interesting that you say that you were absolutely devastated when you stopped breastfeeding your firstborn, and it felt like such a loss. I actually think that might be quite universal, regardless of the age that you stop breastfeeding, whether it's 6 weeks, 6 months, or 2 years old. And the reason I say that is that with my second born, well, in fact, with all of them, I really mourned giving up. But with my third little one, my husband had wanted to do a trip to Namibia, and I was still breastfeeding. She was 6 months. And I thought, okay, it's fine. Or she might have even been a little bit older than that. I thought it was fine, but she was still breastfeeding, just only 1 or 2 feeds, just bedtime and early morning. And I went away. Obviously had very little milk because my breasts never became sore. She was drinking predominantly formula at that point, I think. So she was a bit older than 6 months. And when I came back, she had completely then obviously gone off the breast. And I was just gone for a few nights. And I can remember being so upset because I knew she was my last, and I knew that moment had passed. And I can remember trying to relatch her, and her kind of going, no, forget that. I'm not going to do that anymore. And it was, it was really hard for me. And I realized in that moment that loss, I think, is there for every mum in the last of anything, whether it is the last time they snuggle into your bed, or the last time, they wear nappies or have a dummy or whatever, like all those lasts, the things that you wish away, when that actually comes, it's just a hard journey.
Yeah, it's really hard, and it was very hard for me. So I can imagine exactly what you went through. It was just difficult because, as I said, breastfeeding is such a special moment for me and my babies when I do it. It's like that bond. It's like you both connecting during that time. And, it's just a very special time, which I enjoy. So it wasn't great when I couldn't do it the first time. So I want to try and do it as long as I can this time. And as I said, luckily this time I do have more breast milk. So just like you had mentioned, you said that you don't produce like large amounts of milk and you feel like a failure, or you felt like a failure. I can relate to that too, because my sister had so much breast milk. Her babies were exclusively breastfed and they were very chunky kids and very cute. So I expected, okay, it's probably going to be the same for me. And it wasn't the same. And even now, as I mentioned, I have to supplement with formula in order to keep up. And so he doesn't lose weight. So I'm lucky that I can breastfeed. I'm lucky that breastfeeding did come easily. And I do want to continue for as long as possible, even though I am giving formula too.
Yeah, absolutely. And now that 6-week mark is a big mark, not just because little ones generally, if there are criers, start to settle a little bit more, but because we also have all of our checks with our peds and our gynaes and so on. Have you had all of those checks now, or are you still waiting for those?
So they're happening this week. We're going to go for our 6-week vaccinations, 6-week checkup for Uyakile, and then I'm going to go for my gynae checkup too. So we're doing it all on the same day.
Okay. And what do you anticipate from those appointments? I mean, you are a ped, so you've been on the other side of the table. What type of things is the pediatrician going to be looking for at that appointment?
So the ped generally at this appointment will check for the milestones, which we've discussed earlier on, just to make sure that baby's developing the way that he should and he's on the right track. She'll check if his immunizations are up to date, which they will be because he's going for his vaccines on the exact same day. She obviously goes over how his feeding is. So she'll ask me about breastfeeding and how much he feeds and formula and all of that stuff. She'll check his weight, his head circumference, and his length to make sure that he's growing also. And then just basically check in and make sure that everything else is fine and whether I have any questions. So those are the main things that the pediatrician will check for. And then he comes back for a follow-up appointment, usually at about 3 to 4 months of age.
Okay, interesting. And let's talk about weight gain. So obviously he was born, was he 2 or 2.1? He was really little, wasn't he?
He was 2.045.
Very, very small. And so is he catching up? Is he on a curve where you'd expect him to be for a 6-week-old, or is he taking a little bit of time to get there?
So he's catching up quite nicely, but we will see this week when he gets weighed again with the pediatrician. Last we checked, he had caught up. We expect in the newborn phase for them to gain about 150 to 200 grams per week. So that's what he was doing. So he was doing quite well. And I mean, I know that numbers don't mean much. And as a pediatrician, I usually tell moms, don't usually focus on a number. We want to see the growth curve. But I was super excited to see that he was catching up and that he was gaining weight well. So I'm very excited to see this week how much he weighs. And I know he's gained weight because his cheeks are filling out and he has a double chin. And on top of that, his onesies, which were massive for him when he was born, are now starting to fit nicely. So that's also a nice milestone.
Precious boy. Well, sounds like he is on such a good trajectory, and you sound amazing. I can hear him in the background, that gorgeous little newborn whale. It's so precious. Is he hungry
with his
now?
Dad. He's probably struggling with him a little bit, but yeah.
Well, let's let you go. Thank you for joining us, Nellie, and for being for sharing all of your knowledge so freely. We're loving tracking your journey, and we'll definitely chat in a couple of weeks.
Thank you so much, Meg. I appreciate it. Can't wait to chat again.
Thank you for joining me today. I hope that today's conversation has brought you a little more clarity, calm, and confidence on your parenting journey. We'll be back next week with another episode, same time, same place, and always here to support you. And in the meantime, download the Parent Sense app and take the guesswork out of feeding, sleep, weaning routines, and everything in between.